Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and I hope you guys are embracing your dreams and protecting your honor. That's right, just the other evening, I completed my playthrough of Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, the remaster to one of my favorite games growing up. So of course, I'm here to hit you guys today with a big old barrel of dumb apples that is my review.
Wait! What's this dumb apple?
Because how could I not, right? A lot of you who know me or who spent a good amount of time in my community might already know this, but the original Crisis Core that came out back in 2007, which serves as the prequel to Final Fantasy VII, which would later go on to become my favorite game of all time, was a very big part of my childhood. And I reviewed this game a year ago now on my channel, and I believe that in that review, I spoke about how Crisis Core was my introduction to video games as a powerful storytelling medium, and being able to appreciate them for their rich narratives and memorable characters. I love the story of Zack Fair and the hero's journey that he embarks on in this game, and the legacy that he leaves behind in the form of Cloud Strife, my favorite video game character of all time. So to say that the reveal of Crisis Core Reunion, a current generation remaster to a game that came out almost 16 years ago now, had me incredibly excited would be a massive understatement. And what better way to have that game revealed to me than on my birthday itself back on June 16th during the 25th anniversary event for Final Fantasy VII, where we not only got the reveal for this game, but also the reveal for Part 2 of Final Fantasy VII Remake, aka Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Rebirth! It has a title! Dude! Best birthday ever, dude, I swear! Next winter? Just definitely one of the best days of my entire life. But anywho, tangents about sappy memories over. Conflict resolved. So by now you guys are probably assuming that I loved this remaster, that now that I've played and completed it, I absolutely adore Crisis Core Reunion, considering that I'm such a big fan of the original and just the world of Final Fantasy VII in general. And you know what? You're not wrong. This game was incredible. It allowed me to relive my childhood in a way that elevated my opinion of Crisis Core as opposed to tarnishing it. So yeah, there you have it. At this point, you could click off the video if you wanted to, because that's my verdict on Crisis Core Reunion. But I have a confession to make, you guys, and it is this. I was skeptical that this was the verdict I would come to, despite how obvious it should have been from the start that I would love this game. Just a moment ago, I mentioned that this remaster did not tarnish my opinion of Crisis Core, or rather, it didn't make me ashamed to be a fan of Crisis Core, which admittedly I was dreadfully anxious about leading up to Reunion's release. I was so worried that this game was going to degrade certain aspects of the original Crisis Core, specifically the visuals, music, and voice acting, the third of which worried both myself and a majority of fans in the Final Fantasy VII fandom the most.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep.
And I'm going to tackle all three of these areas today in this review, and how my anxiety pertaining to these was alleviated to a large extent, if not completely. So let's start with the visuals. Now, when I saw the reveal trailer half a year ago now for Crisis Core Reunion, I was undoubtedly excited, of course, but a part of me was also concerned. I felt back then that while the environment shown off in the trailer looked great, a lot of the character models did not, particularly Zack himself in certain scenes. And what I'm actually going to do is I'll play a clip of my reaction to the trailer where I talk about my dislike of its visual quality. And where in one instance, I even point out that I think that the 2007 PSP version of the game looked better. So yeah, be warned, because this clip is aged poorly. But I'm so happy to be able to say that it did. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or a hot take, but I like the look of this Zack better than the look of this Zack. I don't know. It might be a hot take. I don't know what people think, but yeah, I don't know. He kind of looks uncanny here a little bit. Everything has like a very plasticky feel to it. So yeah, if that clip was milk, I would have given you guys a health warning before you consumed it, because it aged fucking horribly. Between the 6 months that this game was revealed to us and we finally got to play it, it is clear that Square Enix went to great efforts to polish absolutely everything in this package to the highest possible degree. And the visuals are no exception, and are in fact perhaps the best example of that. The environments in this game look sublime, as they've been completely remade from the ground up to satisfy modern generation standards, and the character models, which again I was mainly worried about going into this, were a joy to witness in their glorious definitive forms. So much so that I completely forgot that I was concerned about the visuals going into this game. Hell, at one point I thought unironically that this game looked better than Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm not even fucking kidding. It legitimately looked even better than the remake for a second. Like that shot of him spinning the sword. Holy. Everything in this game looked so unbelievably good. And as a result, I had to question whether or not this game even falls under the widely accepted definition of a remaster, considering that everything presented here visually, short of the original CG cutscenes, was remade as opposed to just being upscaled. And even then in the CG cutscenes, there are small changes that have been made, like the Buster Sword, for example, uses the definitive design introduced in the remake as opposed to its original Crisis Core form. And seeing that in action really blew my mind. I was like, what magic did they have to do in order to go in and seemingly unalter these original CG cutscenes, but at the same time add in a new Buster Sword? Like, these cutscenes look unchanged, but still changed in some way. This was really crazy. And I'd like to say that amongst everything I saw in this game, the visuals are what mainly convinced me that this game wasn't just some half-assed cash grab that Square Enix was going to be treating as a mere afterthought, but rather a labor of passion and love, which is absolutely what Crisis Core Reunion comes across at the end of the day. And I'm just so happy that we're here. Now, the next major concern I had going into this game was the music. And this was one that was based more so on a misunderstanding more than anything. And that's because when I heard that they were going to be rescoring the original soundtrack of Crisis Core, I erroneously assumed that this meant that they were going to be replacing all the tracks from the original game with brand new music we had never heard before. And that did not sit well with me, since the original game has one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Every single track in that game is indelible and is full of heart and a wide range of powerful emotions that stay with you for a long time. And that music never did leave me. To this day, I still listen to Crisis Core's soundtrack while I'm editing, working, or even driving. And some of you may know this, but I actually use a lot of its music in my starting soon screen for my live streams. So yeah, going into Crisis Core Reunion, it was important to me that they got the music right. And boy, oh boy, they absolutely did. Not only was the music incredible in this game, but I was also proven wrong, since this game didn't redo the music entirely, but instead enhanced and remixed the original tracks in a way that made a majority of them sound even better. Oh yeah, it's so funky. I love it. It's the same theme, but it just sounds cooler, as it should. Right, that is exactly how you remaster a soundtrack, in my opinion. Now, granted, my personal favorite track, that being Night of Seclusion, and maybe another track or two in this game, sounded superior, I feel, in the original game. But for a majority of this experience, almost every single track sounded more powerful, moving, and poignant than in the original Crisis Core. And I found it funny how some tracks in this game sounded near identical and completely unchanged from the original game, which serves to show just how well the 2007 game's music has aged overall, and how some of its tracks just can't be topped no matter how hard you cut it. The best example of this for me personally was how my favorite battle theme from the original game, titled Howling Abominations, had seemingly been unaltered and was just as much of a banger as it was in the original.
Activating combat mode.
So yeah, the music here was phenomenal and absolutely exceeded my expectations. And now we come to the last, but certainly not least, as I came to conclude, quality of this game that I was dreadfully anxious about going into Crisis Core Reunion. So much so that I thought that amongst all three things that I mentioned had me concerned about this game, this would be the final nail in the coffin for this game and would be what would absolutely destroy the experience of Crisis Core for me single-handedly. I know it sounds dramatic, but bear with me here, guys. That is how I felt internally. And what I'm talking about here is the voice acting. Now, this is undeniably the most contentious aspect of Crisis Core Reunion. You'll have one half of the fandom who have no issues with the new voice cast of the game, while you'll have another camp of fans who despise the new voice work with a passion. And I will be completely honest with you guys when I say that I was pretty much originally in the latter. From all the lines I'd heard by Caleb Pierce as Zack in both the reveal trailer of Crisis Core Reunion, as well as his limited appearances in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it didn't take long for me to conclude that I abhorred the way that Zack sounded and longed for Rick Gomez, the original voice talent for the character, to return.
So I can cut loose, right?
Use some discretion.
I can cut loose, right?
Within reason.
A summon! Who called it out? A summon? Who called it out?
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep. Embrace your dreams. And whatever happens, protect your honor. As soldier! Come and get it!
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep. Embrace your dreams. And whatever happens, protect your honor. As a soldier! Come and get it!
I also shared a similar view towards Sephiroth's new voice, although I didn't quite dislike it as much as other folks in the community seemed to.
It means Angeal has betrayed us as well.
It means Angeal has betrayed us as well.
And my gripes only fell upon these two characters specifically, which was a shame considering that they're central characters of this story. All the characters, with the exception of these two in my opinion, sounded absolutely fine. And this was further reinforced when I actually played the game, because most of them didn't just sound great, but many of them sounded even better than in the original game. Characters like Cloud and Aerith, both voiced by their respective actors from the remake reprising their roles, and even some of the Crisis Core specific characters like Genesis, for example, sounded considerably better in my personal opinion than in the original game. And they brought so much more life, nuance, and emotion to the table that made me really happy to see.
I'm Aerith. You fell from the sky.
Huh?
Scared me. Stop. Don't step on the flowers.
Excuse me?
Normally, people are more careful with flowers.
Well, I guess I'm not normal. Hey, why don't we grab a bite to eat after you're done? My treat.
Really? That would be great. So, once I'm feeling better, I'll go. Because right now, just thinking of food makes me... sorry.
Dude,
My bad. Don't sweat it.
this is some
Well,
excellent
hope you
voice
feel
work.
better soon.
Holy shit. I love Steve Burton, right, as Cloud, but my god, if Cody Christian did make me quickly come to recognize him as the definitive voice for Cloud in my mind. Like, he has done such great voice work with this character. It is unbelievable. Then something interesting happened while I was playing, and something that I did not expect whatsoever. And it was the fact that these new voices that I was initially not on board with whatsoever started to grow on me, particularly that of Zack's. Going into this game, I was expecting every single one of Zack's newly voiced lines to be phoned in and inferior to those of his original voice actor. But this was not the case at all. And to my surprise, there were even some scenes where I preferred Zack's new voice actor to his original one, particularly closer to the beginning of the game, which is where Zack is this young, naive, and cocky character, all of which are characteristics that are far better represented by his new voice, which is nasally and gives off this more bratty sort of impression. And the other big aspect of Reunion here, which was admittedly the thing I was most excited for going into this game, was the addition of voice acting to every single one of the non-voiced conversations from the original game. And this is where Caleb Pierce really shined through. And this is where a lot of Zack's lines were performed incredibly well by Pierce in my opinion. Particularly this one scene between Zack and Song outside of Aerith's church in the slums. I really liked the voice work there.
By the way, Song, you're annoying too. You were spying on Aerith, right? What? No comment?
Turks take care of Turk business. If you want to go play with Aerith, you're welcome to do so.
Hey! I'm not playing! I'm fulfilling my duties as soldier to protect—
Hey, mister! I heard you're making a flower wagon. Make it real fancy, so Aerith will be surprised.
Wait! This is for— to protect Aerith! Hey, Song!
Oh, dude, I love it. I think that this part right here was not voiced in the original, but they really went all out. That sounded great. So yeah, come to think of it, all the scenes with Zack that involve him getting into these comical and goofy scenarios was where I preferred Caleb Pierce to Rick Gomez, the latter of whom sounded far more mature, punchy, and heartfelt as Zack. And Caleb didn't always nail the lines. He didn't. Particularly the ones where Zack is getting upset at the many emotionally charged scenarios he's presented with in the game.
Working for Hollander now? What is it you're after?
World domination.
That's not even funny, man.
Working for Hollander now? What is it you're after?
World domination.
That's not even funny, man.
Angeal! Angeal!
My friend, do you fly away now? To a world that abhors you and I?
Shut up!
All that awaits
Shut
you
up! I'm
is
warning
a
you!
somber morrow.
Angeal!
My friend, do you fly away now? To a world that abhors you and I?
Shut up!
All that awaits you
Shut up! I'm warning
is a
you!
somber morrow.
But while I'll admit that by the end of the game, I still did of course prefer Rick Gomez overall due to him being able to convey all of Zack's characteristics without missing a beat, ranging from his naive and lighthearted formative years to his waning confidence and disillusionment with the company he looked up to, I still walked away from this game as the credits rolled with a far more positive outlook towards Caleb Pierce's take on the character. And this was especially the case when I witnessed the ending of this game, where Caleb Pierce's re-delivery of Zack's emotional and iconic lines greatly exceeded both my expectations and Caleb's own voice performance of those very same lines in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep.
Wow, he really improved.
Embrace your dreams. And whatever happens, protect your honor. As a soldier! Come and get it!
Embrace your dreams. And whatever happens, protect your honor.
As soldier!
Okay, man.
Come and get it!
Caleb gets it. He finally gets it, man. The difference between him starting out in Final Fantasy VII Remake as Zack and him performing Zack's lines at the end of Crisis Core Reunion is freaking night and day, man. And I just feel like Caleb Pierce is absolutely improving as he continues to voice Zack, and that he is beginning to really understand this character that he's playing. And one thing I would like to add here, guys, is I just think that it's really important to be understanding and empathetic towards both him and the new voice actors that the community has been having gripes with, since they've had to undertake this heavy task of filling the shoes of legendary voice talents who delivered such powerful performances through which we came to love and resonate with these amazing video game characters so much. So at the end of the day, I don't think that these voice actors have done a bad job by any means whatsoever. I think what's going on here is that we're comparing them doing a decent job to former actors with a wealth of experience in this field whose performances were exceptionally good. And the ending of this game gives me the utmost confidence that going forward in Final Fantasy VII media, Caleb is only going to improve at voicing Zack, especially once he's been given significantly better voice direction, which I feel plays a big part in determining the quality of a voice actor's performance. So overall, I walked away feeling very satisfied and relieved with how the voice work of this game turned out compared to what I imagined it would sound like leading up to the game's release. And I would also like to point out the things that made me not just content, but very happy with some of the voice work in this game, which again goes back to the fact that every single non-voiced scene from the original is now fully voiced in this game. It was so cool to be able to hear some key characters from Final Fantasy VII like Tifa and Yuffie, who were previously never voiced in Crisis Core. And they sounded really, really good, you guys. And I was pleasantly surprised by just how much weight and emotion you could hear in even the NPCs' voices. Like, man, the Shinra grunts and Wutai troops specifically in this game, dude, they, like, wow, they sounded so gruff and intimidating. Oh, it's so cool how they're voiced too, and there's like echo to it as well.
Come and face us, soldier, if you dare. Huh? Where did he go?
Right, I forgot about this. It's actually confused.
Little pest.
And their voice acting is surprisingly good.
Treachery.
Like, shit. It's great. I was expecting them to phone it in so hard for like those little things that weren't originally voiced. My god.
This area is currently under investigation for possible leads on Director Lazard's disappearance. If you have no business here, please move along.
Damn, the voice acting for these troopers is so good. Sound mean. It just sounded like their voice actors had so much fun recording lines in the booth, and that made me smile. Because playing this game, I really did get the impression that everyone who worked on it was just having a lot of fun. So yeah, all three of my major concerns going into Crisis Core Reunion were successfully quelled. Oh yeah!
Conflict resolved.
And now I'd like to unload the last couple of dumb apples from this review barrel by talking about the things that I was not at all concerned about going into Crisis Core and that were as amazing as I thought they were going to be. And the elephant in the room when it comes to that has got to be the gameplay overhauls and changes that Reunion brings to the table. And we need to talk about that in the context of the combat first. Now, as much as I love the original Crisis Core, I can admit that its combat had some glaring issues, namely with its spinning wheel, aka DMW system, that I talked about in my original Crisis Core review as well. Now in that review, I pointed out that the issue with Zack leveling up, getting combat buffs, and of course pulling off incredibly powerful attacks or limit breaks through his spinning wheel system had to do with luck and randomization, which takes away from the fun of the gameplay. But funnily, this game proved me wrong on that point, and it made me realize that that wasn't the issue, because the combat retains all that luck and randomization, but is still significantly more fun to play. And I now realize why. And it's because the actual issue with the original DMW system had to do with its intrusiveness. Every couple of seconds or so, it would pop up on your screen and significantly hinder the flow of battle. It would take up so much of your time to spin faces, show random narrative flashbacks, and oftentimes not even lead to the same three faces lining up to allow Zack to perform his limit break, making the whole event pointless. But now, that entire thing is still in the game, but has been relegated to only taking place at the top left of your screen in real time as you battle through enemies. And let's say that the three faces do line up in the DMW and you can perform a limit break as Zack. What's amazing here is that this game doesn't force you to use it. It allows you to bank it for later use in the fight, allowing for more flexibility in your battles. And I did mention that the randomization and luck factors of that are still present here, but even those have been diminished a little bit, and certainly in a good way. A great example of that is how you can now deal damage to your enemies as they are casting their ultimates in order to weaken the damage that those ultimates are about to deal, if not negate them completely. And that is huge because, my god, one of the worst aspects of the combat in the original Crisis Core was when you were doing really well in a fight, only for a boss to pull out a really ultimate powerful crazy attack that just one-shotted you and ended your parade. And it's just great to see that this game now offers you the ability to actually deal with that. And stuff like this borders into not only great gameplay design, but also very good quality of life improvements, of which several little things here make such a huge difference to the game that are absolutely worth mentioning. Stuff like being able to restart from the beginning of a battle, or hell, even from the midway point of a battle after you die, is what this game now allows you to do, as opposed to having to restart the entire game from a save point all over again and wait through cutscenes you can't skip before a fight takes place, which is exactly what playing the original game was like. But now you can speedily hop right back into your fights. You're even allowed to reassess your equipment before you do so, and you can even skip those pesky long-ass cutscenes that play before key fights too. As a child, I would die so many times during key boss fights that I seriously ended up memorizing the cutscenes that play before them, word for word, like an assignment for poetry class in high school, considering you couldn't fucking skip that shit. They gave him a magic barrier and he gave my fucking... No! He killed me. I was right to be afraid. I was right to fear Sephiroth. I don't know what those gems were doing, man. I was right to fear the gems. The hidden gems. The uncut gems. Fucking hell, man. Okay. We're gonna run a few more attempts here. Oh god, we do have to talk to Tifa. Shit. But Jesus Christ, man. God bless emulation speed up. Can you imagine a 10-year-old me watching this cutscene fucking 30 times in a row trying to beat Sephiroth without being able to skip it? This is unacceptable, man. Jesus Christ. Talk about long movie-like unskippable cutscenes. It's like, next time make me watch the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy while I wait for the boss fight. Jesus. But now it just feels so good to be able to skip those cutscenes, which I didn't do, but let's say I was stuck for a really long time on a certain boss, I would love to do that. And speaking of cutscenes and cinematics and stuff like that, I gotta mention that the battle ones, oh my god, the battle ones, they look so good. I know we talked about the visuals, but those goddamn, like, can we just take a second here to appreciate those goddamn beautifully recreated summoning animations and CG cutscenes? Just some, holy shit, some badass stuff here. Holy, I can't wait to see the cinematic and the remake. Right here. Holy fuck. This shit is badass. Fucking hell, this video game. This shit exudes fucking cool. Even though this fight ain't so cool. Excuse the pun. And one little thing that I want to add here that significantly elevated my gameplay experience with Crisis Core Reunion was the fact that due to this new checkpoint system combined with the fact that you can now see points of interest on the overhauled map in this game, so many of the side quests that I either never completed or never even knew about as a child were things that I was actually able to do now. And I loved that, right? I finally got to do things that in all 16 years of me playing this game, I never even knew existed in the game. But what's cool is that I also had so much fun actually doing them too, considering that everything was now fully voiced. But not just that, right? They were just straight up more incentivizing. And I use the word incentivizing here because a lot of the notoriously repetitive side missions of the original game have so much to offer you now. Like, there's a new system where the more of these missions you do over time, the more of these special rewards you'll unlock. And now there's even a guide that tells you which missions give you certain key items as a reward. And then the missions themselves tell you just how many chests you have left to discover. I could go on and on. There's just so many little things that make the process of going through these side missions a lot more time efficient and bearable. Especially when you consider that, again, anytime you die during these missions, you won't have to restart the entire thing, which was a big factor that quickly deterred me from wanting to complete every side op in the original game. But now, with all of these changes, I think I just might. So make sure you hop on over to twitch.tv/IrritableIndian to see me do that all. And on top of everything here, you just have so many other incredible pizza toppings that make everything feel so good to play. Like, obviously your controller, which vibrates now, which was never a thing before since the original game was only ever on PSP, until now of course. And then there's even Zack's attack animations and patterns that have been completely redone from the ground up, making them more resemblant of Cloud's attacks from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Zack's hits feel stronger, more weighty, and so much more satisfying overall. And speaking of the remake, my god, we have to acknowledge that game's undeniable influence on this remaster. Everything from the beautifully redone user interface to some straight up brand spanking new combat mechanics have FF7 Remake written all over it. Like, minor spoilers here, but when Zack gets his Buster Sword at the halfway point of this game, he suddenly gets these new attack animations with it that distinguish it heavily from his bland soldier operative sword, but on top of that, a specific combat mechanic with a sword from FF7 Remake is ripped and slapped right onto this game. And that was a mechanic that was never there in the original Crisis Core, and it blew my freaking mind. The specific mechanic here that I'm talking about is that Zack can enter a new power stance mode similar to Cloud's Punisher mode from the remake, where he can modify his attacks, build up a new proficiency gauge that slowly doles out more attack bonuses the higher it goes, and just so much more. And that is so freaking cool. I just couldn't believe that on top of this game being a remaster, it still introduced new things. And it's also so cool narratively, right? Because it makes you retroactively go back and realize exactly why Cloud was using the sword the way that he was in 7 Remake and during its gameplay. And I won't go into further detail on that. We'll just leave that there. I won't go into spoilers, but that's just so cool to think about. And again, all of these little changes here go back to a point I made earlier in this review, which was that this game makes you question if it really is a remaster, considering that it does so much more than just slapping a shinier coat of paint over a pre-existing experience. In my mind, you guys, this game is absolutely more than a remaster, as it describes itself to be in its own slogan. And while it may not be a full-on remake, since it is ultimately the same experience narratively from start to finish with no new sequences, story beats, or anything too major like that added in, it certainly is something in between a remaster and remake that I would personally like to call a redesign. It's amazing stuff, and I hope that developers looking to remaster but not entirely remake their games in the future take a big ol' note from Square Enix's book on how to make an impassioned one that is well worth a $65 Canadian price tag, because this right here, Crisis Core Reunion, is how you do a kick-ass remaster in my opinion. Now granted, as much as I think this game absolutely slaps, and I'm so glad that it does in the grand scheme of things, it does still have its hiccups, and a majority of those are largely because of its greatest strength, ironically. And what I mean by that is that this game, through being a remaster but not a remake, certainly has some vestiges left over from the original Crisis Core that have not aged well. A good example of this is the non-voiced segments of the original game, which are again fully voiced here. And while I loved that concept here overall, there was no denying that at times these scenes felt very stiff, and it's because the emotions present to the characters' voices don't match up at times with the dead expressions on their faces and their lackluster robotic movements.
Hey, can we start now?
What?
Filling the slums with lots of flowers.
She says it with such a dead expression on her face. Yeah, a lot of these non-voice portions from the original game are like vestigial in this, like in terms of the facial animation, just left over.
It's looking really cute.
And they don't go with the voices.
Wait, we're gonna give up the search?
We can't leave any evidence.
It's just such a big pause.
An airstrike has been called. Are you sure nobody is at Angeal's house?
Aunt Jill's house!
Hurry!
It's clear to me that despite these characters looking cleaner and prettier, they are definitely still using the same skeleton rigs as in the original Crisis Core, which is understandable considering that this is a remaster at the end of the day, but I can't deny that it did make a lot of the dialogue very jarring at times. Another thing that is obviously unaltered in this game is a majority of its writing, a lot of which was understandably hit or miss for a lot of people in the original. And while I do appreciate that a lot of the lines in this game were rewritten to make a little more sense than in the original game, and to also allow lines to flow better for the scenes that weren't originally voiced, a lot of the awkward character moments and cheesy dialogue with the Crisis Core specific characters, such as Angeal and Genesis, still remain. Something I mentioned in my review of the original Crisis Core last year was that growing up, I couldn't see any of these flaws with the game's writing, and I really liked all the goofy dialogue and character moments. But now that I'm older, I'm absolutely able to acknowledge why the writing in this game isn't the best at times, and also the fact that Crisis Core Reunion hasn't made it that much better. So while I may have this strong personal attachment to this game, and I want to be able to give this a perfect 10 out of 10 score because of how it took a game that means the world to me and made it almost infinitely better, more realistically, the final rating that Crisis Core Reunion gets from me is as follows. It is the highest possible 9 out of 10 that I can give. And if you're curious what I gave the original game, it was a 7. At the end of the day, Crisis Core Reunion is a remaster that embraces its former self from 2007. And instead of trying to pretend like it was perfect, it sticks to its guns and reinvents itself in a way that we can appreciate it so much more than what it used to be originally. And for that, I'm just very grateful to Square Enix. I'm so happy that this game didn't make me feel awkward or ashamed to be a Crisis Core fan, like I was worried it would, but that it rather made me feel even better about it. This is a game that I once recommended, that I now wholeheartedly recommend. Happy gaming, everyone. And that's all the dumb apples out of the barrel as we bring this review to a close. Wow, I want to say this was one of the longest I've done, but that's okay. I have no regrets. I just had so much to say about this game that holds such a special place in my heart, and I thank anyone who watched this all the way through. It means a lot to me. And please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I would greatly appreciate that. And even though our hero's journey with Zack may be over in Crisis Core, the Irritable saga never ends, and we're going to be continuing streaming this game in New Game Plus on hard mode, while also doing even more of the side missions to try and complete them all. Ultimately, I want to be able to get all the achievements in this game, since that's another thing now. You can finally unlock achievements for this game, which is amazing, and this is one of my favorite games ever, so of course I'm going to do that. So you guys, stop by at twitch.tv/irritableindian if you want to say hi and join the adventure. But until the next one, folks, embrace your dreams, protect your honor, and as always, keep on keeping on.